My name is Thomas Reed, and for most of my life, I was the kind of man people forget about until something breaks. You know the type. Not the guy talking in meetings, not the one getting awards or big emails, the one everyone calls when something stops working. Ask Tom, he'll figure it out. That was me. I'd worked in warehouse and operations since I was 19. At first, it was supposed to be temporary, until I decide what I really want to do. Then it was until I find a better job. At some point, I realized this was my job. I was good at turning chaos into something you could manage, and people trusted me. By 43, I was a senior operations lead at a large distribution center on the edge of the city. Not a director, not an executive, but the guy everything quietly depended on. I didn't have a shiny degree, didn't have powerful friends, wasn't good at corporate small talk. What I did have, two hands that knew how to work a head that remembered every zone and choke point in that building, and a reputation for never walking away in the middle of a mess. That was enough for me. I came in before everyone, left after everyone, covered shifts when someone got sick, stepped in on the floor when we were short, and I honestly believed that was enough to be safe. Right up until it wasn't. Right up until he showed up. My manager's name was Larry. We'd worked together about 10 years. He came in long after me but climbed higher, faster. Not because he was smarter or worked harder, because he understood one simple thing. Upper management doesn't fall in love with the people who do the work. They fall in love with the people who look useful. Larry knew how to look useful. He laughed at every joke from upstairs. Took the right people to lunch. Spoke their language. Synergy, scalability, optimization. Even though on our floor everything came down to four basic questions. What? Where? When? Who? When they promoted him, he started calling me his rock. Tom, he'd say, throwing an arm around me in front of others. I'd drown in this place without you. You're my right hand. People laughed. I felt a little awkward, but yeah, it was nice to hear. Then when something went wrong, the first thing out of his mouth was, Tom, what happened? You're our process guy. That's how it went for years. We weren't friends. I never went to his house. He didn't know my ex-wife's name or where my daughter studied, but at work we were tied together. He was the face. I was the hands and the brain. I thought that was a stable setup. Then spring came, and with it, his cousin. I met him the day I stepped into Larry's office to ask about the next month's schedule. There was a guy sitting at the desk across from Larry, late 20s, clean dress shirt, skinny jeans, hair styled with something expensive, watch that probably cost more than my weekly pay. He sat there, leg crossed over knee, scrolling on his phone like he was killing time between important meetings. Oh, Tom, come in, Larry grinned. Meet my cousin. This is Elijah. He's going to help us out a bit, with process improvement. Elijah stood and held out his hand. Tom, right? He said. I've heard about you. They say you're a legend here. I shook his hand. Soft. No calluses. The hand of someone who's never unloaded a truck at 3 a.m. in winter. I try, I said. Don't be modest, Larry cut in. Look at this guy Elijah. He can tell you where every single pallet is with his eyes closed. We should stick a chip in his head and use him as a live database. Everyone chuckled. I wasn't laughing. So what kind of improvement are we talking about? I asked. Last I checked, we were one of the top performing centers in the region. Exactly, Larry said. And we don't want to get comfortable. The folks upstairs want to see innovation. New ideas, fresh energy. Elijah just finished a serious program. He knows all the modern approaches, digital, automated, all that good stuff. Elijah did a little fake modest smile. I just want to see how you guys are doing things, he said. Maybe I can suggest a few tweaks. Nothing drastic, at least not at first. He winked. I didn't realize it yet, but that was the start. From that moment on, every one of his tweaks was another nail in the coffin of my position. For the first few weeks, he just followed me around. So, walk me through your morning receiving. Why did you set up your zones like this? Why do you still rely on so many manual sign-offs instead of putting everything in the system? I answered calmly. Explained my reasoning, pointed at past problems, bottlenecks, fixes. He listened, nodded, wrote things down on his tablet. You've built a lot here, he'd say now and then. Respect. The word respect sounded empty coming out of his mouth. Soon he started making his own suggestions. We could probably shave off 30% of the time if we cut down on intermediate checks, he told me one day. People are careful. They know what they're doing. People, yes, I said. Systems, no. Controls aren't for people. They're for mistakes. And mistakes always happen. That's old school thinking, Tom, he smiled. Speed is the new currency. Back then, I still tried to argue. Looking back, I shouldn't have bothered. A month later, he started running morning briefings. At first, he co-hosted them with Larry. Then he ran them alone. Okay, team, he'd say, standing in front of the crew, drawing boxes and arrows on the flip chart. You guys need to stop thinking like loaders and start thinking like strategists. You're not just moving boxes, you're moving flows. You're part of a bigger picture. Some of the guys smiled. Some rolled their eyes. Some just stared at the floor, waiting for orders. Tom, he'd say suddenly, turning to me in front of everyone. You don't mind if we experiment a bit, right? To the crew, I was the senior guy. If I said no, I looked like the stubborn old man who feared change. As long as it doesn't compromise safety or compliance, I said. Experiments are fine. See? He turned to the others. Even Tom's open to change. Back then, most didn't understand what was happening. A few of the older guys shot me that side eye that says, "You seeing this?" I was. I just didn't know yet how far it would go. The first real crack showed up in the task assignments. One day, I opened our system to check who was assigned to which zone that week, and saw my name removed from several key steps. Where it normally said Thomas Reed, responsible, it now said E. Meyer. I walked straight into Larry's office. I saw the schedule, I said evenly. You decided to give the entire inbound zone to Elijah? Larry leaned back in his chair and folded his hands on his stomach. Tom, he said, you've been carrying this place for years. Don't you think it's time you eased up a bit? You told me yourself you're tired. I'm tired, I said, but I handle it. Where my name is on something, I guarantee the result. I can't guarantee for a guy who's been here a few months. You're too controlling, he sighed. You gotta learn to trust people. I do trust people, I said. I don't trust numbers that magically look better without any explanation. He looked away for a moment, then leaned forward. Look, he said, the folks upstairs want to see development. They like that I brought in a new specialist. If I keep showing them that we're relying only on you, it makes us look stagnant. I can't let my department look stuck in the past. My department too, I thought. Out loud, I said nothing. I'm not against development, I said instead. But if you take responsibility away from me, you're also taking away authority. And then, when things go wrong, you're still going to ask me what happened. Like you always do. He glanced down at his desk. You're overreacting, he said. Nothing dramatic is happening. You're still here. It's just going to be different. I didn't understand then that different meant until we get rid of you. 2 weeks later, I got a meeting request from HR. Standard performance review, the email said. I wasn't nervous. My KPIs had been solid for years. My team hit targets. We had very few safety incidents. I walked into a small conference room. A woman from HR I'd seen a couple times was there, and a middle-aged man I'd never seen before. He didn't introduce himself. There was a thick folder on the table. Tom, she started with a professional smile that didn't touch her eyes. We wanted to talk about some concerns we've had regarding your performance and behavior towards recent changes. We've gotten feedback that you've been resistant. That word hit a nerve. Resistant, I repeated. To what exactly? She opened the folder. Inside were key printed chat logs, quotes pulled out of context numbers highlighted in red internal notes, and observations. Right here, she said, pointing, you're expressing doubt about the new process proposals. Here you wrote that the new system is dangerous. Here you say, this is going to break the warehouse. I looked closer. It was a chat between me and one of the senior floor guys. He'd asked, do you seriously think this new plan works? I'd answered, like this will break the warehouse, meaning we'd disrupt everything if we changed too much at once. Now it was sitting in front of me as proof I was sabotaging change. And here, she added, flipping pages, you were late submitting a report. Why? I didn't receive all the data on time, I said. I wrote about that. A deadline is still a deadline, the man cut in. His tone was flat. Delays are delays. I looked at him. His eyes said it all. This wasn't a conversation. This was a formality. Where did you get all this? I asked. Who compiled it? We received an internal recommendation, she said. From your manager, Larry Meyer. I stopped. Larry put this together? I asked. Partly, she said. We also have statements from his cousin, Elijah. He said you've been actively blocking his initiatives and creating a hostile atmosphere toward new approaches. The cold feeling in my stomach got worse. Not because of what they were saying, because it hit me. While I was working, someone else had been writing my story for me. So what happens now? I asked, keeping my voice even. Senior leadership is considering restructuring, she said. One suggestion is to move you into a different role. Less responsibility. No direct reports. Partial pay protection during a transition period. Other option? I asked. She looked at the man. He shrugged. Termination, he said. With minimum severance. I looked at the folder, at all the twisted sentences, half-truths, and warped facts. I could have started explaining each one away. A detail here, a missing email there. Gone point by point to show how manipulated it all was. They would have nodded, pretended to listen, then done what they'd already decided to do. I knew that, so I just said, I'll accept the reassignment. Not because I felt guilty, because sometimes stepping back isn't surrender. It's choosing a better angle for the next move. My new job title sounded nice on paper, but in reality it meant one thing. I no longer had authority over anything. I was now supporting specific operational zones without direct personnel responsibility. Translation: same experience, less power. I walked the floor, watched people trying to follow the new system, and heard the same questions again and again. Tom, this wasn't your idea, right? Because this is... No, I'd say. It's not mine. Some of the old guys openly hated the changes. Some tried their best to adapt. Some used the chaos to do less. Meanwhile, Elijah strutted around like the star of the show. We've managed to reduce processing time by 20%, he'd tell management, pointing at charts. Look at how our productivity has climbed. He didn't mention freight skipping proper checks to save time paperwork being backdated people working at the edge of safety rules. The numbers looked better. Reality looked worse. I could have gone upstairs and said, look, he's wrecking this place. But it would have been my word against his. The demoted old guard versus the young innovator they wanted to believe in. They would have sided with him. I knew that, so I didn't play that game. I decided to do something else. I decided to wait. The first real opportunity came by accident. It was end of month. We were closing out a big period, prepping reports. I was staying late, double-checking a zone where I'd seen numbers that didn't make sense. Walking back past the offices, I noticed one screen still on. Elijah's laptop. Open, unlocked, no one around. There was a spreadsheet up. I didn't walk over and start clicking. Didn't sit down, didn't touch his keyboard. I just looked. Even from a few steps away, I could see the same metric change several times. Revision history visible. Comments in the margin. Adjustment to match target. I knew that Sheet should be pulling data automatically, but here it was, manually edited. That meant only one thing. Someone was dressing up reality. I already suspected as much. This was the first solid confirmation. I didn't take photos, didn't record anything. If an investigation came, they wouldn't need me to find that file. I turned the lights off on my way out and went home. Now I knew what I needed to know. His arrogance was going to destroy him. The only question was when. A few days later, I heard a big partner was coming to see how we operate. Not an internal compliance guy, not some mid-level client. The kind of partner that brings serious volume and has influence upstairs. Larry was nervous. This is a chance to show we're moving forward, he told Elijah. They need to see how much more efficient we've become. Relax, Elijah said. I've got it under control. In my head, something clicked. Under control. Okay, let's see. The visit started off fine. They arrived around 10, two men in suits and a woman with a tablet. We met them at the front. Larry, Elijah, me, a few others. Tom, Larry said just before they stepped in. Just stay close today. If we need backup or someone to answer some detail stuff, you jump in. But let us do the talking. Let us do the talking. Sure, I said. We walked them through the main zones. Elijah had spent the previous evening making everything look nice. New diagrams pinned up, motivational posters, high-vis vests distributed so everyone looked uniform. It looked good. Until they asked to see the actual numbers. The woman with the tablet requested data for one specific shipment that should have gone through 3 days prior. We're seeing one set of figures on our end, she said. The reports we've received from you show something different. Can you explain? Absolutely, Elijah said confidently. We've recently optimized our processing order. There may be a slight delay between system updates and report generation. Then let's do it live, she said. Right now. Show us the path of that shipment from receiving to outbound. And that's where it fell apart. It turned out some of the boxes were still in a zone where, according to paperwork, they shouldn't even exist anymore. Some packing slips had signatures from people who hadn't worked that shift in the system. The load was marked shipped, but physically it was still sitting in our building. That's a technical glitch, Elijah started. Or a human one, she said quietly. They asked for system logs, every change, every status update, every user account. It was all there. User, E. Meyer. Timestamps, late night, outside his scheduled hours. Manual overrides, status flips, edits to fields that should have been locked. The air in the room got thick. This is not how we usually operate, Larry said quickly. We've just moved to a new model and there were some, teething problems. I'm sure, one of the partners cut him off. The question is, why did you think it was acceptable to modify data by hand without notifying us? I stood off to the side saying nothing. I didn't feel bad. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like gravity. You play with numbers long enough, they eventually play with you. After they left, Larry called me into his office. His face was shiny with sweat. Tom, he said, you understand what just happened? I do, I said. You know we've always run a tight ship, he started. Those adjustments, that's just us trying to put our best foot forward. Everyone does it. We were just getting ahead of reality a little bit. Reality doesn't like it when you get ahead of it, I said. He looked at me, panicked. Look, if they talk to you about how we implemented this, you'll tell them that... That what? I asked. We held eye contact. I'll tell them the truth, I said calmly. No more, no less. Then I left. I didn't go upstairs to make a speech, didn't send anonymous emails, didn't campaign against anyone. I knew after a visit like that, no one was going to just shrug and move on. They didn't need me to start digging. I just had to wait. I didn't have to wait long. Elijah didn't show up the next day. Officially, he was out on personal time. Unofficially, he'd been called into another building for a meeting. The day after that, his system access was disabled. Some of his tasks were quietly rerouted. People started whispering. Some said he'd be fired. Some said he'd just get a slap on the wrist. Some said Larry would protect him. I knew one thing. It depended on how far up the anger went. Turned out pretty far. A week later, internal audit asked to speak with me again. Different room, different faces, same cold walls. Thomas, one of them said when I sat down, we've reviewed your department's operations for the last few months. We need your help understanding where changes stopped being improvements and started being violations. I'll answer anything you ask, I said, but I'll tell you up front. I haven't been making decisions for the last 2 months. They removed me from that seat. We're aware, he said. That's exactly why we want to talk to you. They asked a lot about specific days, specific shipments, specific people. I didn't dramatize. I laid out when my responsibilities were taken away, what procedures were altered, and how what optimizations had been put in, who I warned when I saw potential problems. I didn't rush to label anyone a liar or a fraud. I just described what happened. At the end, one of them asked, "You're not angry?" I thought about it. "I am," I said. "Just not at you." He gave the smallest nod. "That helps," he said. A few days later, Larry was gone. No goodbye email, no speech, no explanation. His name disappeared from the org chart on our intranet. His office shelves were empty. Desk cleared out. People talked. Some were quietly happy. Some worried they'd be next. I looked at the empty office and didn't feel joy or sadness. Honestly, I didn't feel much of anything. In moments like that, the emotions shut off. You're left with a simple question. Okay, and now what? The answer came sooner than I expected. Another meeting request, different meeting room. This time, 3 people from senior leadership. "Tom," one of them said, "we've analyzed the situation. A number of serious violations were committed. It's a shame we didn't listen to you earlier." I stayed quiet. "We know your intervention during the partner visit helped us avoid a much bigger problem," he said. "And we know how you were treated." That was the first time anyone up there said it straight. "We don't have a magic undo button," he went on, "but we can change how things look going forward. We need someone who really understands operations, someone who can put things back in order. We believe that person is you." He slid a folder toward me. "We're offering you the role of operations director for this facility," he said. "Full responsibility. The authority Larry had, plus more. And compensation in line with the role." I looked at the folder, then at my hand on the table, then at their faces. "Why now?" I asked. "Why not a year ago? Why not when it was already clear things were going wrong?" He didn't answer right away. "Because," he said finally, "we make mistakes too. We trusted the wrong person. We got sold on the image instead of the substance. That's not an excuse, it's just what happened." I nodded. At least this time they weren't pretending everything had been fine. "If I sit in that chair," I said, "I'm not bringing back the old ways. I'm going to change things too, but not to impress anyone, to make the place work." "That's exactly what we need," he said. I opened the folder and skimmed the offer. No traps, higher pay, real authority. I signed, not because I was hungry for revenge, because I wanted back the right to be responsible for what I'd been holding together all along anyway. My first day in that office felt strange. I walked in, closed the door, and just stood there. Same desk, same chair, same view of the warehouse floor through the glass wall. Only now it was my office. On the desk lay a new badge. Thomas Reed, Operations Director. I picked it up. I remembered standing here once before facing Larry across this exact desk, listening to him say, "The company's moving forward. We need younger energy." I was just past 40 then. I'd felt like old junk being rolled out to the side because it no longer looked modern. Now I was the one standing behind that desk, and I realized something. It wasn't just my job title that changed, I had. I didn't come in swinging an axe, didn't call everyone into a meeting to announce, things are going to be my way now. I pulled in the senior employees and said, here's where we are. And I showed them the real situation. Here's what we're going to do. And I walked them through it. I brought back some of the old procedures that had worked. I kept a few of the small changes Elijah had made that were actually useful, because not everything he did was wrong. I didn't build my authority on erasing everything that came before me just to prove a point. I built it on one simple rule. If it works, we keep it. If it doesn't, we change it. Doesn't matter who thought of it. People feel that. They stopped whispering, started asking questions to my face. Some who'd been ready to quit decided to stay. I watched the mood shift, not overnight, not in a week. Over months. Slowly, but steadily. About 3 months after I got the job, I stepped out by the loading docks during a break. I don't smoke, but sometimes I go out there just to breathe. It's one of the few spots you can see the sky. One of the older drivers walked up next to me. He'd been with the company longer than I had. Hey, he said, you hear about Elijah? No, I said. What about him? Word is he's fighting some legal stuff, the driver said. They're making him pay back losses. Might be more. I don't know exactly. I just shrugged. Could be, I said. You're not happy about that? He looked at me. He tried to take your job, him and Larry both. I thought about it. I'm not happy, I said, but I'm not sorry either. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. It means they made their choices, I said. I made mine. I didn't push them. I didn't frame them. I didn't lie about them upstairs. I just stopped standing in between what they were doing and what was going to happen because of it. If somebody calls that revenge, fine. To me, it's just balance. He was quiet a moment. You know, he said finally, that's probably what real justice looks like. Not when you go out of your way to hurt someone. When you finally stop hurting yourself to protect them. I smiled. Yeah, I said. Something like that. People like to say revenge doesn't fix anything, that you should let it go. Move on. Live your life and don't look back. Maybe that works for some. For me, it doesn't. Not because I enjoy seeing anyone suffer, not because I lie awake planning how to get even, but because I believe something else. If you keep staying quiet while people walk over you, you're not better than them. You're just making it easier for them to do it again. My revenge on Larry and Elijah wasn't dramatic. I didn't scream, didn't threaten, didn't start a gossip war. I just stopped being their shield. I let their own actions collide with them. And when the smoke cleared, I stepped back into the place I'd been holding up all along. Not because I was the loudest, not because I had the right last name, not because I played politics better, because I was the one who knew the work, and I refused to sell myself out to cover someone else's lies. So yeah, my boss tried to replace me with his cousin, and I made him regret it, not by fighting against him, by finally refusing to keep fighting for him.